Hi, today I'm going to show you how to make a very popular Etsy item that I sell, which are blocks that you stand up like on a shelf or a ledge. And this particular set says the word "B.E.L.I.V.E" on it, and people use it at Christmas time. I've made a lot of them in different colors and fonts, and people really like these. So to start this project out, you need a 2x4. I most always use reclaimed wood, so I use the 2x4s that are taken off pallets. And so they look like this when they're first taken off, and you just utilize the 2x4 pieces in between. You also can use just 2x4s that you would buy at Lowe's, like this. The advantage of using the reclaimed wood from pallets is it gives a really unique look. There's like nail holes, and the wood of course looks older because it is. So it just depends on what your taste is. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to measure the 2x4s, and in this particular set that I'm making, I need 4 pieces that are 6 inches long and 3 pieces that are 8 inches long. So I just simply measure those. So in here I just have my measuring tape, and then I'm going to measure right at 6. And it is important, if you want to be exact, that you make the cut now and don't go ahead and mark another 6 inches, because it will be a tiny bit off if you do that. So although it takes more time, if you want to be accurate, this is the correct way to do it. I have a handheld table saw that looks like this, and mine thankfully has a laser on it. So when you turn it on, there'll be a red line that shows you where the cut line is going to be, which makes it really simple to be able to line up your line there on the cut and go ahead and make it. It's really loud, so that's why I don't have it on right now to show you that, but I'll just line up where my line is for my cut, and then turn it on and make the cuts. So I'll do that for all 7 pieces. So now I have all 7 pieces cut, but you can see as they're cut, they leave really rough edges. I don't know if you can, maybe that's too hard to see. You can see they're really rough edges. So I have 2 different options to sand here in my workshop. I have this belt sander here, and you turn it on and the belt on. It is a pretty heavy duty sander. If you notice, I have my work gloves on because it can be very dangerous to your skin if you aren't careful holding your blocks. And then I also just have a hand rotary sander. You can use both options. This is a deeper sand, so it really sands it a lot. Maybe not faster, but it sands it more thoroughly than this handheld sander would be. Sometimes I use both on a project. On this project, I'll probably just use the belt sander. So I'll turn it on, and so of course each piece here is going to take me, you know, several minutes or so, 5 maybe longer minutes on each piece, because you're going to thoroughly sand each side of the block. So, you know, all 4 sides on each end, the flat sides on each of them, so that they really have a nice feel when they're done. On a side note, safety first. I wear my glasses. I wear these goggles when I'm doing the cutting and the sanding, because I've had specks of the wood and dust fly up in my eyes. I also have started wearing a mask when I use the sander, because you really breathe in a lot of the stuff that you're sanding off. And then of course these work gloves when I'm using it as well. So now I have all these blocks sanded down nice and smooth, and I've brought my project inside now. And I am using just acrylic paint. This is a brick red type color, and just a standard paintbrush. I think this is 2-inch size. And the key to doing this so it has that rustic antique look is that you're not putting a ton of paint on your brush at one time. So when you're painting the pieces, you're giving it just a very light stroke on there. Since you're going to be sanding again to get that rusticy look, you really don't want
so much paint on there, you're just gonna be sanding it off anyway. And then you have a quicker drying time. So let's put that on there, and then it'll look more rustic-y then when you antique it later. And then of course you have to do all sides here, so it does get a little bit messy trying to get all of the sides done. I paint the backs, even though technically they're not showing, I paint the backs too. And this is whatever kind of style you like, and you could just barely put paint on like this. And if you want the solid look that's less antiqued and looks more finished, then you could just put a solid coat of paint on. Really, the antiquing comes not as much in the painting as it does in the sanding after the project is done. So that's your next step. So now I have all of the blocks painted, and I'm going to start doing the lettering. And I have the letters printed and cut out from my laptop, and I've sized them appropriately. This is an upper and lowercase piece. I also have all capitals, but this particular order, this customer wanted the lowercase set. So I'm just using old school carbon paper, laid it on top of my block, and then laid my lettering over, my letter over top of it. And then I'm just taking a pencil and drawing very carefully on the edge here. And then after I've traced it, just take it off and the letter shows up on the block. Another thing I would like to mention here is I like to set up my blocks before I start doing the lettering, especially when you're using reclaimed wood, or even if you're using 2x4s at Lowe's, because they still are very unique. I like to set them up so I can see what character is in the wood, you know, different little knots and nicks there are, and make sure that the piece they're sitting on is nice and sturdy. So I kind of lay those out first before I choose which letter to put on each block. And now I'm just painting in the lines very carefully. And after all of the items are painted, I go back and do the antiquing. Another note about painting, as you can see, I've finished painting all the lettering, is about brushes. The hardest part of this project is probably the painting. Even though you're painting in the lines, you really want crisp lines. So if you're gonna buy a cheap paintbrush like this, you're not gonna do well. I really like the square tipped brushes or the angled ones, and I do use a very small brush on some of my projects to just make the edges really, really crisp and clear. So this definitely is a practice makes progress type activity of, you know, being able to have a steady hand and using the correct brush. There are 2 final steps to complete our B.E.L.I.V.E block project. The next one is antiquing. I use the round sander for that, and this is a little subjective depending on what the customer or yourself likes. You can antique more or less for your own tastes. I'll do an example here. And then the last item is optional as well. You can put a clear coat over the top of the blocks. I think this really gives it a nice finished look. You can paint on the polyurethane or you can spray with a clear coat. I've done both. This is a thicker, clear color on it, and it does often yellow the white lettering a little bit. And then this is just a little bit of a shimmer clear gloss coat on there. So here we are to do some sanding. Here is the finished project, the B.E.L.I.V.E blocks. You can see that they're lightly antiqued. I did use the spray gloss and sprayed a clear gloss over them just so they look nice and finished. And here's your end result.